afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining tonight's webinar. My name is Adam, Content Marketing Specialist with Schein, and I'll be your moderator. If at any point during the webinar you do have questions, please type them into the Q&A section of your control panel, and we will cover as many as we can at the end of the webinar. To ensure a smooth viewing experience, please make sure that your volume is up and any large applications on your computer or mobile device are closed. This webinar is presented by Schein Dental, and no CE credits are being offered for viewing this presentation. Our speaker today is Dr. Gregory Wu. Dr. Wu is joined by his CPA, Mark Rosen. Guys, thanks for being with us today. Take it away, Dr. Wu.
Thank you. I'm very excited to speak with Mark, who's also my dear friend, and it allowed me to tell my story of how I went from a dental associate to a multi-site practice owner before 40. So here we go. Mark and I said it's kind of happy hour. So, for those of you guys who are going to take advantage of beverages, please.
Too bad we aren't have beverages ourselves, but
yes.
Hopefully you're all enjoying yourself while we go through this next hour or so.
We would love to. We hope this will be entertaining for everyone. So this is kind of the outline for today. I'm going to introduce myself and Mark, talk a little brief overview of my journey, what I think are the 4 P's of a successful business, which is planning, people, process, and product. I'm going to share with you my mission, vision, and value statement in my practice and how I wrote them out. The purchase of my initial practice, and I'm going to share with you my numbers. And we have Mark as obviously like a color commentator to kind of give some insight on how that is. And when I moved my practice, and then when I built my second location, and finally, I'll share with you some final thoughts, questions, and how I handled COVID-19 in my practice. So a little bit about myself. I graduated from dental school in 2005, and I did my AGD at UCLA in 2006. I own Emerson Dental, which has 2 locations in both Westford and Bedford, Massachusetts. My office is a fully digital CEREC integrated office with an in-house lab technician. And I did complete Henry Schein's Dental Business Institute. And in 2019, Dentaltown wrote an article about my experience with the Dental Business Institute. So it's all on my LinkedIn and Instagram. So if you're curious about the article, feel free to connect with me there. And here I hand it off to the greatest accountant east of the Mississippi.
Thanks, Greg. Always appreciate it. So thanks for the introduction. Obviously, I am Greg's an Emerson Dental CPA, and Greg is, of course, a good friend. So happy to be here and go through this stuff. And usually I'm leading the reins, and I'm happy to help out along the way. So I'm a partner at Rosen Associates. We cover a little over 800 dental practices throughout New England, providing accounting, tax, and practice management. I'm also a partner in more dental transitions. We do brokerage services. And our newest company is Rosen Summit Dental Advisors. Work very closely, obviously, with my partner, Nancy Kagan, and Michael Zeff in that. And then, frequent speaker at Yankee and Connecticut, and obviously now a Zoom speaker along the way. So I'm happy to be here. So Greg, let's take it away and go through your journey together.
All right.
For a second time.
For a second time, yes. So Mark and I met a while back when I first was actually an associate. And as you can tell by his background, he's an avid golfer. So he had always invited me to come and play golf with him. What he didn't know is I can hit the golf ball, but I was always embarrassed to play because I knew how avid he was. The first time he invited me, I turned him down. The second time he invited me, I turned him down. And then the third time, finally, I was like, okay, I'm going to come and play golf with him. What I didn't know is that he was going to introduce me to a whole network of coaches and mentors. And he has a whole net, because he's a dental CPA, I got to meet a lot of mentors, and he pulled me aside one day and he said, I'm glad you came out to play because these guys run very successful practices and I want you to pick their brain. So that's something that helped me along the way. And for those of you who are thinking about owning a practice or you're an associate, find a good coach, because like the quote says, a good coach can change a game, a great coach can change a life. And really you're early on in your career, and I know a lot of you that are on here on this webinar early on in your career, you do want to find a coach and a mentor.
And I think early on, Greg connected early on with me and with others, and throughout throughout your career. And I always talk about, building that team and the people around you, but developing that network early on. So, as you go through we go through the webinar here, people have gone through this before. sorry to say, you're not usually, cutting a path yourself. Someone else has been down that. So to get that kind of experience and be very candid with the people you get to know well, I think just helps you along the way. And they've made mistakes, and Greg has too, and everyone has. But if you learn from those, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and I look at this as me being able to give back because, I'll give a shout out to Dr. Tony Saito, Dr. Yang Ku. Even he lectures, so he even gave me a lot of tips when I started lecturing. Same with Matt Boynton. They shared with me how they run their practices and a lot of insight. I look at them as like my big brothers. So, it's been great. So as Mark and I develop our relationship, one of the things I'll say, we don't always see eye to eye. In fact, a lot of times I say 6 and he says 9. Or, sometimes he says 3 fingers, and usually I'm the one where you see that view there. But a lot of times, when I make decisions, I ask him, what do you think? And I do remember this, Mark, one time you asked me, do you even care what I think? And I said, yes, because I do need you to protect me from myself, because I only see one angle of what I'm trying to do with my practice. And you have the advantage of having, 200 clients, and you've seen all sorts of different dental practices, and you've seen the success and failures of them. So,
but I think that's the important thing, that, you as the dentist have a vision that you want to go down the path, whether, it's a write-off and you think, hey, can I write this off? And, or it's just, I want to take on more debt, or I want to buy this equipment, or I want to do, anything you're going to do. And we banter back and forth, pluses and minuses. I'm there to play devil's advocate. I'm there to, like you said, protect yourself from yourself. So we go through it, but it's a partnership. And I think that's the important thing. We have that conversation, and, I do ask you, Garrett, I think, but at the end of the day, I'm going to, you want people that are there to support you,
right?
But that aren't just saying, oh yeah, go ahead, do this, that, and the other thing. Let's look at it, and let's not look a month down the road. Let's look, 5-10 years down the road.
Exactly. So that's our introduction. I'm going to tell you a little brief overview of my journey. Much like many of you, I started as an associate. I actually worked at multiple different offices. I actually recommend that for those of you who are going to enter into associateships. And I highly recommend that when you first start off, don't go right into practice ownership, because when you're an associate, you can focus on dentistry. When you become a practice owner, your attention does get diverted. So I was an associate part-time for a prosthodontist for 3 years. He wanted to sell this practice, so I purchased it. When I purchased it in 2010, it was 5 chairs and 6 employees, and it was doing about $1 million in revenue. Over the years, I grew it. We added perio, endo, and pedo specialties. We moved across the hallway in 2015 to 8 chairs. And then in 2019, I didn't learn my lesson the first time, so I built a second office, much to Mark's chagrin, but we had a little banter about that. I built a 2-chair, and it's currently my primary location is at $3.2 million in annual revenue. And I now have 26 employees.
Yeah, no, it was a journey from place to place, but it's been successful. And, I think going through the whole thing here, you'll get a better idea of, why we saw different things and how we got to where Greg is today.
Right. So I want to go kind of through the 4 cornerstones of what I think a successful business has. Marcus Lemonis, he talks about the 3 Ps: people, product, process. I like to add the 4th P, which I think is the most important. And that 4th P is planning. I think not enough people do this. A perfect example is Warren Buffett. He says, an idiot with a plan can beat a genius without a plan. So for those of you who don't have a plan, I highly recommend, even if it's not a business plan, set goals for yourself. What are your 30, 60-day, 90-day goals? What are your 2-year goals? What are your 5-year goals? I mean, goals can change, but you should set them.
I don't think they're just financial goals either. I mean, that's one thing. Financial goals or projections that the banks require are all well and good. But when you're looking at people and the other P's that come into play, how big do you want to be, how many chairs, what procedures you want to do, like those are other type goals, not just I want to make $1 million or that type of thing.
Right. What kind of dentist do you want to be? And for those of you who don't think planning for the business or planning your office isn't important, I mean, I relate it to a clinical standpoint. The patient on the top missing a lot of teeth, would you treat that patient without a treatment plan? The patient on the bottom looks like he's healthy. You probably could get away without treating that patient without a plan, but it wouldn't be a wise thing. So, we do this in dentistry. We make a treatment plan. We follow up with our patients. We perio chart. We monitor their perio charting. We should do the same thing for our business plans. It's not just you write a business plan and that's it. We should periodically check in. And that's where Mark and I, have our, yearly meetings or annual meetings. Sometimes we do quarterly if it's needed, to kind of check in on where the numbers are at. Are we out of whack?
And I think it's always good. I mean, the check-ins, just like you got to relate it to your practice, right? You're going to check in every 6 months, or with perio a little bit more. So developing that plan throughout the year. And I talk about tax planning and projections, and like now we're, about to be in super projection time, and it's just so important in just everything you do. So, you plan when you build the practice, and you plan out as you grow the practice. And, again, like Greg said, looking down the line a couple of years, planning that is just super important.
Right. And I'm sure you've had clients in the past where they're not ready to pay the amount of taxes that they are because they didn't plan it properly. So
sure,
planned out in multiple ways, right, Mark?
No one likes a surprise. I mean, no one likes a surprise in anything. And so just like this, I mean, you don't want to be surprised. Like, I'm busier than I thought, and I only built out 3 chairs and I didn't plan properly. So can I get a 4th one in here? Can I get, can I move quickly on that stuff, which is great. But looking at the overall plan, the dollars, whether they're going towards one thing or taxes, are all the same dollars. So you got to make sure you allocate them properly.
Yeah. So we talked about plan. The next one I think is the second most important is people. So Steve Jobs says it best, it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. Perfect example is I ask my assistants a lot of times when things aren't flowing right, from your point of view, what is not right? If it's a hygiene problem, I ask the hygienist, what would you do if you were in my shoes? That's how I manage my people. And, I also look for leaders in my office. Carnegie Foundation did a study that 15% of one's financial success is due to their technical knowledge, but 85% is due to their skill in human engineering, and it's a personality and ability to lead people. When I am hiring people, I look for leaders. Now, I'm going to be the first to say, and I'm sure, Mark, you'll agree, finding good people is one of the most difficult things when you're running a business. One of the things that I like to interview, when I interview, I ask the scenario of, it's not just, what are you looking for? What hours are you looking for? One of the most important questions is I put the interviewee in the case of, hey, how do you deal with a difficult patient? And I want to know how they would handle it. I want to see if they would take the leadership on how they would handle it versus, oh, I would go ask the doctor, or I would go ask, somebody else. I want to know that they would take the leadership role.
I mean, maybe I'd say, Greg, I'm going to give you lots of credit here. I mean, I think maybe more so than a lot of my clients. I think Greg does a lot for the people, and I think a lot of practices do, and I think it's awesome. And you're going to sort of see that when we start talking about COVID and how Greg dealt with his employees during COVID. But there's so much at different events. I've seen you, Greg, there with the employees, and how much sort of they enjoy the being around everyone and the environment in your practice. And a good environment in the practice goes so far. Right, it can take you well beyond a practice with a bad environment that's just got a lot of volume. And it's hard, especially on COVID. Managing people is hard. Now, with all the stuff going on now, look at all the stuff we've had to go through with employees. Lots and lots of changes. So having that solid team, which is very hard to find, is very hard to find, but getting that in place is extremely important.
And I'm always looking for good people. So, if I see someone good, I'll find a way to make room. So, the question I have for those of you who are already practice owners, does your team believe in you? One of the things that was important to me is I wanted to know that my staff believed in not just me, but in the whole entire practice, the concept, the philosophies. And so I asked them, would you see me as a dentist? And did they refer their families, their friends? And that was said a lot to me. And then what do they say when you leave the room? And Mark, you've always preached this to me, what kind of people are you going to surround yourself with, your network, not just, your staff, but the accountant, lawyers, bankers, all those relationships are important. And Richard Branson in the quote here says it best, clients don't come first, employees come first. And I truly believe this. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients.
Yeah. I mean, it goes a long way. I mean, it's so important. You can't say it enough. I mean, it's your greatest asset, and sometimes your hardest asset, and your most expensive, right? You look at the P&Ls. the staff costs are, 25 to 28, even 30% of all your costs, even more when you start paying the payroll taxes and all that type of stuff. So it's a big cost, but well worth it. And, they'll take you where you want to go if you can all get on the same bus pretty much.
Absolutely. And this goes into like when you do build a team, and we see this in sports, the team comes together and then, you build the team and then they storm. They're trying to figure each other out. They're like, where should I be? Especially on a basketball team, they're passing the ball. Who's going to be the shooter? Who's going to play defense? And then you start norming, you start kind of normalizing. And then perform is what I call, and unfortunately, a lot of teams don't get there. Performing is when you can do the no-look pass and you know exactly where that person is. And we see that even in clinical dentistry. When you first work with your assistant, for those clinicians out there, things are awkward. Where am I going to be? So we see this in multiple things in our day-to-day practice. And that's actually why it's valuable to keep your team happy and keep them with you, because that way you can get to performing. And then Bill Belichick says it best, on a team, what matters the most is not the strength of the individual players, but the strength of the unit and how they function together. So you're going to have superstars on your team for sure, but it's all about putting the pieces together and what your team can function as. So that was the people. Then we want to talk about process, which is also important. Bill Gates says this best, I choose a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it. So the question I have for those of you guys who own practices, are you a dentist that runs a business, or are you a business that just happens to do dentistry? There is a difference. Wealthy, successful entrepreneurs all have something in common, and many people think that they just work really hard, but I believe it's leverage. They leverage other people's time, money, resources, and knowledge. In fact, earlier today, Mark and I had a question about someone talking about loans. And, some people look at loans as a bad thing. I'm like, no, we're going to leverage money. We're going to borrow someone's money to use it to make more money. And, the average dentist, usually their hourly production is about $600 to $1,000 an hour. So, what's your time worth when you're spending 15 minutes doing something else? And this next slide will show it best. So I don't know how many of you have ever seen this, but there are tasks that you do in your day-to-day life that produce $10 an hour. There are tasks that you do that produce $100 an hour. There are tasks that you do that produce $1,000 an hour. And there are tasks that you do that produce $10,000 an hour. So perfect to use it as a clinical example in my office. How many of you answer your own phones? You don't. You delegate that and you task that. You task that to someone, and that should be in the $10 box. So what you should do is take what you do in a day-to-day, and in my office, I have a fish tank, much to Mark's chagrin. He doesn't like that.
I like fish. I don't like the costs that come along with the tanks. And sometimes it's just one tank, but you can go into a little more of how many tanks you have in your new office.
Right. So, but it's part of the brand. So this is one of those disagreements that Mark and I have.
You're like Aquaman. That's your plan. You want to be Aquaman.
I didn't really want to build a dental office. I wanted to build an aquarium, but then again, feeding the fish, that gets delegated. How many of you guys do your own steri? There's my assistant. She's not happy that I'm there, and she says, get out. That's my territory. Stay your lane. So that's all this stuff, autoclave, cleaning the autoclave, maintenance your equipment. If you get busy, most of your time should be focused on doing dentistry, where you can focus on the $1,000 box. And for those of you who are practice owners, other than buying lotto tickets, you want to work on your business, not in your business. Because when you work on your business, that's how you get into that $10,000 box.
And I talk about always about doing your own payroll or doing those type of things, which I never want people to do their own payroll, because your time is better spent, in the in the $1,000 or the $10,000 or even the $100 box. Some of these things, some of these tasks that people take on thinking I'm going to save money by doing this, but in reality, you want to do what you do best and where you make the most amount of money. And so, I laughed at Greg when he first showed me the slide, and I think it's a perfect slide. In fact, I gave a webinar 2 weeks ago, which was recorded, so it hasn't even aired yet, but I used this slide because I thought it was so good.
I'm going to expect a royalty check.
It will be there. You wait for it. Yeah.
So we talked about the first 3 Ps, plan, people, and process. The last one, the product, which is dentistry. So now is all dentistry the same? Is all food the same? Now, if we took a dental practice and used it as a restaurant analogy, are you the McDonald's of dental practices, or are you a high-end, restaurant? And there's nothing wrong with either. Both have customer service, both have a brand. I think one of the things is you got to define who you are and who you want to be.
And I think nowadays that goes into, do you want to be an insurance-based practice? Do you not want to be an insurance-based practice, right? You could look at this lots of different ways, and people start one way and turn and develop the other, just given the environment. So you got to be flexible if that's where it takes you, but that goes into the vision, that goes into, you know, your product and all that stuff. But it is, it's important to identify exactly which direction so you can make sure you map that out right.
And this is where having an accountant like Mark, you know, you're valuable because you have so many different clients. You can talk about, you know, all the different things that work. And it's no one restaurant is the one way to do it, just like no one dental practice is the one way to do it. So just a summary of my 4 Ps, you know, when I was planning, my key thing was to build relationships, network for knowledge and organic growth. I wanted to build the right culture, and I wanted to focus on team building. And just like Mark said, I put a lot of money into investing in my people. And then the process, you know, I wanted to think different, and I wanted to cultivate a culture of creativity for efficiency. You know, and companies that inspired me are like Apple, where they think different. I love that motto. And my product that I wanted to create an exceptional patient experience. And I modeled that after Disney, the happiest place on earth. And everybody knows the customer service experience that they have. And I love this quote from Starbucks, because some people think all dentistry is the same, but you know, the quote here of beware the cheaper cup of coffee, it comes with a price. Well, that was my motto for my practice too. Beware the cheaper dentistry, it comes with a price. So here's a little example of, you know, how to market your practice and what you want patients to see. You know, what do you see here? You see a frog. Anybody see the horse?
I do. I see the horse.
There you go. So this kind of goes back to the 6 and 9 where, you know, Mark and I were talking about, we see things in different angles. So look at yourself when you are practicing, when you do start your practice, look at it yourself from the patient's perspective. What do they see? Do you want them to see this or this or that? I mean, this is why patients don't want to go to the dental practice. This was very important to me, that the patients had an ultimate patient experience. I wanted them to see, I mean, obviously post-COVID now, you know, I'm not allowed to have kids playing.
This room's empty now.
Yeah, it's empty now. But I wanted to see them, the inviting kids area, my fish tank, the artwork, all the decor, all those things mattered. You know, I wanted them to see a very nice, clean operatory with all the latest technologies, letting them know that I was committed to the best quality of care to them. You know, I wanted my team to look pristine, to smile, be warm and friendly. You know, and even my CEREC cabinet, which I spent an extra $2,000 to get the customized color so it matched the office. You know, and I know Mark didn't like that either, but you know,
That's
I said
okay.
it's got to match, right?
It's all part of the brand. I mean, that's what you're putting out.
Yeah. So those are the 4 Ps. Now I want to share with you, you know, my own mission, vision, value statement. So, you know, the first thing is to define what that is. Do you know what a mission statement and a why statement is? Just like you see that picture of me with the, you know, American flag, the U.S. flag, it stands for something. We think of that as freedom, you know, and when we see that. So for your practice, what do you want that to represent? Why do you do what you do? What gets you up in the morning? What's the purpose of your company, and what do you stand for? My why statement is to create smiles with everything that we do so that everyone can enjoy the journey through life. And the mission statement for our practice, the goal of our practice is to provide the best dental care to our patients so that each is able to achieve and maintain optimal health throughout their lifetime. We are dedicated to treating each patient as a whole person with emphasis on preventive dentistry. We treat our patients the way we ourselves want to be treated, with compassion, gentleness, and personal attention. We strive to deliver excellent quality and attentive care to each patient who joins our practice. And
Sign me up. I'm coming.
And this is posted in not just our website, this is also posted in the office. And when you walk in the front door, you'll see the mission statement.
And I don't think, you know, I haven't, it's funny, I don't talk to a lot of my clients about their mission statements, and I'm willing to bet a lot of the practices don't have mission statements. And Greg has always talked about that and the philosophy that he has. And I think that's why, as you can see through this presentation, how, you know, important it is about it. And that's what's sort of part of what's made, you know, the Emerson Dental very successful just because of the environment that's created. Everyone's got the same mission. We're on the same path together. We're all on the same bus, getting the best employees you possibly can, and then you can head off on this journey, like doing some building here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the vision statement is the next one. The vision statement can change. Your mission statement and your why statement should not. That should be stagnant. Your vision statement is your goals, kind of what we talked about earlier. Where do you want to be in the future? When I first bought my practice, my vision statement was just to make sure I could grow the practice, and then what are the goals that you set for yourself? There's Dr. Swee and I in that picture. That's when we expanded from 5 chairs to 8 chairs, and we took the picture, we put it on our social media. It was a big hit. And then, as you can see, the helmets had little Minions hats on there. So, we want to try to keep things fun in my practice. So this is my vision statement today. By 2023, we want to be a multi-location premier multi-specialty dental practice in the greater Boston area by exceeding the expectations of our patients. We want to become the category consultant in multi-specialty practice operations. We want to become the original that others will try to copy. We want to fully integrate all digital technology, provide an integral part of the patient's total health care, provide a caring atmosphere for both patients and staff, provide timely and efficient care, function as a team to maximize uses of our resources, and advocate for quality dentistry. And obviously the most important is make health promotion a patient's priority. And again, this is also posted in my office so that everyone on my team knows where we're trying to get to. And they're reminded every day of these are our goals. The last one is values. This is what you represent, and what I actually use this to hire, because you want to have people that are like-minded and that share the same values. And there's no one value that's more than the other. These are just some examples. Some of you may value, accuracy in your practice. Some may value consistency. Some may be patient focus. Some may value speed and reliability. These are my values, and I say pick 5. No more than that, because it becomes confusing. But in my practice, the 5 values, the first 3 here on the slide, is honesty, transparency throughout the organization and key decisions. Honesty is the first chapter in the Book of Wisdom. I try to be transparent with my team about all the key decisions that we do. Creativity was important to me. I want people to problem solve. Creativity inspires ideas, and ideas inspire change. Creativity is just intelligence having fun. And then I talked about this earlier. I'm always looking for leaders, and leaders doesn't mean that they have a leadership position and they have a title. I clearly define it here by John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, or do more, and become more, you are a leader. And those are the type of employees I'm always looking for. The last 2, in my practice, I pride myself on running on time. So efficiency, I want to do better than what's already being done. And, efficiency is intelligence being lazy. I want to challenge the status quo. And then, as you can see, we like to have fun. So, so often we become focused on the finish line. We fail to enjoy the journey. And Confucius says, choose a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. And
that's the way I do it. I love it. These PPP loans, these Zoom meetings, the best. Love them.
That's why I do this,
No doubt.
All right, so we're going to get into the meat of this, and this is where, Mark's going to kind of chime in on a lot of this. I'm going to talk about my journey with my purchase of my practice. So when I first purchased my practice, I bought it for $850,000. I set up as an S Corp, and I'm happy to share my numbers. That's my first year numbers. My staff salaries were high because I inherited the staff there. The rent was high, and then I think, Mark, when you and I first met, you and I were debating, is the, expenses too high or the revenue too low? My thing when we first talked, I was trying to establish the right people in place. Maybe you can chime in a little bit about, why did we set up as an S Corp,
right?
And all those things here.
Yeah. So, back in, when this practice was started, some of the tax rules were a little different than they are today. But most of the suggestions, if practices are looking to grow and you're going to see income over $200,000-$300,000, for the most part, you're going to see S corps. I always talk about one of my pet peeves. I mentioned it before, not doing your own payroll, but doing an asset purchase as opposed to a stock purchase. This was an asset purchase, in which case we bought goodwill, bought equipment, and we can depreciate those over time. And with all the high tech purchases that Greg has made over time, and we'll see that in both practices, we've been able to utilize the deductions of those practices. And so in knowing kind of Greg's philosophy early on, we set up as an S corporation to be able to give him a salary, pay in taxes that way, and then obviously utilize some flow through income to avoid Medicare taxes. Nowadays, with the new qualified business income deduction, it's a little bit more debatable whether you set up an S corp or a single member LLC. It sort of depends on everyone's situation. But setting that foundation early on just takes you really far. So when we do the buyer rep, when we look at practices, we're going to evaluate. Great question there, Greg. Is rent too high at 8%? Sure, but we knew there was room for growth. We knew we could get, and develop more and make it more efficient, implement all of your different, values and visions and everything, and then drive it higher. So when anyone buys a practice, there's always some massaging that's going to take place. Numbers going to be out of whack. And, the goal is to figure out what you need to do in order to get them in the right spot.
Right. And when I bought the practice, I didn't buy it to just have it continue the same revenue, year after year.
Right.
And Mark, you and I talk, I want to grow this thing. So, and I think I can.
Yeah.
So one of the things, for those of you who do work with Henry Schein, this is my Henry Schein practice analysis. They do this. It's great because they go through your fees. And actually, here's an example. I actually kind of screenshotted them so that everybody can see them. They look at where your percentile of your fees should be, the average fee percentile. Is it a high priority for you to adjust to the fees? And the next page here that you're going to see, I think is the most important thing, is to kind of see where you're going to compare to the average office. Now, this is more recent. This is a 2019 report. It shows you that, obviously I do a lot of implants, 12% compared to the average office that does 7%. Part of it is obviously because I'm multi-specialty and I have a periodontist that places all the implants. So very little gets referred out. Same with an endo. You can see 7% compared to the 4%. So every practice is going to be different. I mean, Mark, you probably can chime in a little bit about, what you see with practices and, how you analyze these kind of things.
I mean, this goes back into your philosophy of what you want in the practice, right? You chose to have a multi-specialty practice. So, when you do evaluations like this and we start looking at the fees or we look at, the production numbers, they're going to vary they're going to be all over the place. And multi-specialty practices are often very hard to compare to each other because everybody does a different version of multi-specialty, right? Are you a pedo-ortho practice only, right? Are you a general practice that does now endo and perio? Do you do also a little ortho? Do you not do ortho? Oral surgery kind of sits on its own most of the time on an island by themselves for the most part. But being able to do all of these things, this is a true multi-specialty practice. You've got, you kind of hit a lot of the targets here, but again, back to your vision. What do you want to do? And then setting these goals as to where, what you want the kind of mix in your practice is important. So, Schein does a great job in terms of putting this kind of stuff together to give you that snapshot.
And I didn't add all these, just so people know, I didn't add all these specialties overnight. I mean, there was a slow, gradual kind of like, hey, let me add endo first, and let me add perio, and let me add pedo. So it didn't happen overnight.
An analysis takes place. Like if I see you're not referring out anything, then well, why are we, or if you see you don't have a lot of implants or something like that, then it's not going to do us any good to bring someone in here. So you got to evaluate what you see amongst your patient base and maybe the previous owner, what were they referring out? What are they losing? Did you buy a practice that's the, referodontist, right? That just sends everything out and you're doing, drill and fill and that's it. And so that is oftentimes are good practices to make multi-specialty if a lot's been referred out in the past.
Yeah, and that's why education's key. Expand your procedure mix if you're looking to kind of expand your revenue. Even if you're not going to bring specialists, learn how to do the procedures yourself.
Someone just asked the question, how do you structure multi-specialty practices from overhead and compensation of specialists? So, oftentimes specialists, they can be 1099 people. They're usually getting a percentage of what they do. It varies. Endodontists, typically you'll see 50%. You'll see perio. Well, you see generals at about 35%. Perio is usually around 40%. of collections. I like being paid. I like paying people of collections, obviously, because once you get the money, then we're able to pay it. So it just depends on the specialty. Everyone's a little bit different. For the most part, ortho is the only one that gets usually a per day. I see that a lot just because the treatment plan's over a long period of time. But
it's also hard to calculate because ortho
Yeah.
is not instantaneous. So
Right.
Great question. So we talked about the purchase of my practice. Now I'm going to talk about, when I started growing, I bought in 2010. 5 years later, I went from about $1 million in revenue to about 1.8. And I started telling Mark, hey, things are getting kind of tight. At the time when in 2015, the 5 chairs was maxing out. I had a part-time pediatric dentist, part-time endodontist, and a periodontist coming in. I also added an associate just because I just wanted to be able to take time off. So that was helpful. And, at that point, I had got the staff salaries down to about 23% and the rent down to 3% because, mind you, the rent was still the same. I just increased my revenue. So it was just a ratio. And then new patients were booked out. And so I started to ask Mark, like, should I move the office, expand the current office? When should I outfit the chairs and stage the growth? And how do I time the equipment? And the most important thing, debt consolidation. So
and when we look at it, one of the things you can look at it on this income statement alone, I think Greg does a great job of, most practices look and say, I buy something for $50,000. I took a loan on it. I want to write that off now. Okay. I want the immediate satisfaction of reducing my taxes now. But Greg doesn't look at things that way. Greg's like, listen, I'm willing to pay $10, $15, $20,000 if down the line I know I can continue to utilize those deductions, right? So we talk about, staging the equipment, but then also spreading out that deduction. And so you'll see when we go to 15 here, we've got $162,000 worth of deductions, a year or so after practice, because we didn't take all the deduction in year one. We began to spread it. And so as Greg continued to expand, we can layer those deductions one on top of another and spread those out. It's a little rare because most people want the immediate deduction, and that's great. And it does work, but sometimes the vision's just different. And if you can spread it out and mirror those deductions with your debt, because we're taking on more debt to do this, it can sometimes work very, very well.
And well, I've always said to you, Mark, and this is a marathon for me, not a sprint. So, I'm in the long game. So
yeah, you're willing to pay a little bit of money now, understanding. I mean, no one likes to pay Uncle Sam, but as you do, it's great. And, I'll hand it over back to you. But as you see that depreciation line 520, you can see 300,000, 275, 245, right? We're buying some stuff along the way, but really not. It's really just the same assets from the beginning as we're building them that's just spreading year after year. And it's sheltering, as you can see, lots of taxes.
Right. And this is the staging of the equipment. And like I said, back in 2015, we decided to move my practice across the hallway and we built it from 5 chairs to 8 chairs. We didn't build it all at once. In 2016, we went to 6 chairs. And you can see I went from 1.8 million in revenue to 2.2. Then as that got busier, we added the 7th chair and then we went to 2.4. And then in 2018, we added the 8th chair and then we went to 3.
And most people, they're looking at every chair, is about $250,000 to $300,000 in, production, maybe even collections, depending. And you sort of follow that trend. I mean, you got about $500,000 from 17 to 18, but you're also bringing in a different procedure mix, right? As you're growing, different procedures and different specialists are continuing to work more and more. So in a true general practice, you're going to see 250 or so per chair, but in a multi-specialty, now we can get a lot more out of an additional chair if we're able to fill that specialty spot.
Right. So then came the big question. And this was very recent. I remember this because I called Mark and he was like, what? What now?
What do you want to do now?
Exactly. I'm like, Mark, I grew the 8 chairs. What do I do? My schedule's booked out. Should I drop insurances? Should I raise fees? Should I expand my hours? Or, do I move the office again and expand? Or do I build a second location? And, this is where I was at the end of 2018 when we started kind of making that decision-making process.
And I'm not a bigger is better. Like I truly don't believe bigger is better. I think you can work in one location, you can make it very efficient, and you can maximize that. And I think too many people don't maximize the position or the location they're in. They see their friends expanding, they see the DSOs, multi-locations, and they think, well, that's what I need to do to be successful. And so that's why I'm not always a bigger or better. And that's why I said to Greg, do you really need another one? Like, do we really want to take on more debt and buy more equipment and kind of add more employees? It's a lot to handle when, hey, we're just getting in a rhythm here in the new location. And Greg said, that's great, but this is the way I'm going.
Well, actually, it's funny that you say, because bigger isn't always better. I will share with everyone here, small office, small problems, big office, big problems. When the wheels can come off in a bigger office. So you have to make sure you have all your systems in place. If you don't have systems, you don't have vision, values, it's very difficult to get big and manage it properly. But my thing to Mark, I said, look, I really enjoy what I'm doing. And I know you don't think it's a great idea, but I kind of feel like when I was 12 years old and I ran out of Legos, I kind of ran out of Legos to build. And I want to buy another Lego set. So, lo and behold, obviously from the preview here, you can tell I made the decision.
You bought the Millennium Falcon with 1,000 pieces.
Yes. I decided to build a second location. And I told them this time I'm going to do it even more over the top. I said, I'm going to put fish tanks in every room to give that ultimate patient experience. I want to equip it with all Sirona equipment, the top of the line stuff. So,
couple questions here, Greg. So how much debt right now are you carrying on the practice?
About a little under $2 million right now.
In total debt, and it's varied between banks and
Right.
And SBA, if I remember. And then from an ops manager, how are you managing the people? Do you have a team leaders? Do you do an ops manager? Is it just you running the whole show?
Right. So, I do have an org chart, and that's important. The org chart changed as I grew. Now I have 7 assistants, I have 7 hygienists, obviously 7 front desk. So we have team leads. I can't touch everybody anymore. So I actually have, one lead assistant, 1 lead hygienist, 1 lead front desk, and the office manager. And we do our leadership meetings. And then we have an all staff meeting really just to present everything.
No, that's important. Yeah, we'll keep going. But yeah, we talked about the fish tanks, and it's not that they're awesome, and I think they look amazing. I always joke that when I look on the P&L and I look at that line, I'm like, what is this under, like repair maintenance? And I'm like, aqua something. I'm like,
It's higher than most of your clients, obviously.
It is a lot. Yes. Most people don't have 8 fish tanks. How many fish tanks you got now?
I've got 5 fish tanks now. So
right, there you go. We need a full-time, Aquaman there.
Well, I figured if dentistry doesn't work out, I'm just gonna, turn it into an aquarium and charge admission.
Perfect. There you go. There's one. If you can get inside with a mask.
So, like you said, I built a second location. This is where the office in the second location was a de novo. Part of the reason I decided to build it from scratch was because I've never done it. And it was just one of those challenges I just wanted to do. I mean, I had the option, obviously, to buy an existing practice and convert it, but I'd already done that. So, this was just my own personal challenge. This is my end of year 2019 numbers. Like I said, we finished at 3.2 million. That's the picture of when we were building out. I learned some lessons from my first practice, how I would do things differently. One of the biggest ones was I wanted to have parking for my families with small children because we have a pediatric dentist. And then Mark, you and I debated on a lot on this, and maybe you can chime in on this, whether we should do a single entity, combined, and obviously you talked about more debt and, the cost segregation part. You were instrumental about that.
Yeah, so having multi-locations and tracking it in a separate entity is definitely a big decision, because if you're in the early years of a de novo or a startup practice, you're going to incur losses just from getting going, filling the office. And if you're not putting any money in and you want to be, in other words, if you're borrowing all of the money, you're not able to take that deduction. We're not able to utilize it because it sort of gets stuck in that entity because you didn't put anything in. And so by keeping it in this, what we did with Greg is we kept it in one company under one S Corp. And so all of the deductions from that first practice can continue to utilize and write off, reduce the income of the first practice. So the new practice is helping us strategize and push all of our deductions forward. And we, to track multiple locations can be very difficult. And it's sort of like junk in, junk out. Like if we're not going to track it and that's not something that's important, then a lot of people just blend them together. If you can keep them separate and you can track all your expenses, that can work well. But when you do a big build out I highly encourage Greg to do what's called a cost segregation. When you do a build out, some of the assets like equipment, that's easy. It's a 5-year or 1-year write-off if we have income to offset. But some of all the building of walls and the putting up of the plumbing systems and the dental electric systems, we want that split out so we can get a faster write-off than what was 39 years or even 15 years. We can get some of that into 5 years. And it's a cost segregation study done by engineers that help break that up. And so we're, again, in the very beginning, we've really focused, like I said, Greg does a great job of seeing the future in terms of let's spread those deductions. So we're able to break up the deductions through a cost seg study, write off some of the longer term things early on. So we didn't have to wait 15 years. We could take that early and then taking some of our 5-year assets and pushing those out so we continue to shelter income. And of course, I'm sure Greg will talk about it. We didn't know what was going to happen in the future. So we were kind of on our way to, building it left and right.
Yeah, I was chugging along, and I don't have any regrets even with COVID-19, but I was chugging along. I was like, great. I started to turn a corner. March, we were just starting to, I think I was just starting to get out of the red out of this, practice. And then as you all know, COVID-19 happened and, we had a 12-week shutdown out here in Massachusetts. So, before COVID, we were ramping up our marketing in the new office. We were starting to see numbers with the new patients growing, and we were just about getting ready to hire a new hygienist. Because like Mark said, I want you to do your own hygiene. And I did a little bit of it. And I started borrowing staff from the other office to kind of help me. And I was like, you know what? It's starting to be able to sustain itself. It's time to bring somebody on. This is my numbers from 2020 till June. As you can probably see, it's down. If you just take that and multiply it by 2, you can probably already see I'm not going to hit 3.2 million at any near rate here. But what we did see after, the COVID shutdown, we did find that that the momentum was lost and we saw a slowdown in our efficiency as we reopened, because obviously we have to take different safety measures, taking temperatures and what have you. So, I'm very big on when we have staff meetings, I always have like a motto. My motto to the team was, we need to be like water. Bruce Lee says this best, empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. You put water in a cup, it becomes a cup. You put water in a teapot, it becomes a teapot. Water can flow and creep and drip or crash. Be water, my friend. So we wanted to adapt to whatever COVID was going to present to us.
And so before we move on, Greg, like what type of, people ask a question here, what type of marketing as you're moving into the new practice, I could probably answer it for you. Greg is big on social media. And social media and videos and humor and fun. And I think it just comes out in everything that Greg does. And I think it's a great marketing tool, but you tell me more things you do, but that was the question I asked. What type of marketing has been most, return on investment for you? Do you ever do multi-practice marketing or a specific location? You can answer that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, both practices are named Emerson Dental. So it was just the brand. So it was easy to market the brand. So I didn't have to market one practice location versus the other. It was just, we're Emerson Dental, we're a multi-specialty practice. That was one marketing. And the fish tanks, actually, believe it or not, is marketing because patients talk about it. They go and tell their friends, hey, my dentist has this amazing fish tank. It was awesome. Also, internal marketing was always number one. Yes, the social media was helpful. And I'll give credit to my associate, Dr. George Kwan. He's the one who put a lot of the social media and the videos together. He was great at doing all the editing. That wasn't my strong suit, but like we talked about the little boxes, that got delegated and he was really good at that. But if you build the people where they're going to refer people to you, that was actually the number one. Number two was networking. I joined BNI, Chamber of Commerce, try to get myself out there. Obviously that's a little harder now with COVID-19 because those gatherings aren't there or they're all over Zoom calls. And then yes, social media and getting your name out there in the website, making sure that your entire brand is what you are.
All right, another couple questions before we continue to move on. Just explain a bit more about spreading out the deductions. It's all about just depreciation and how you take the depreciation. When you buy assets, you're able to, you have two choices. You either write it off the way the IRS sets the years, meaning like you buy equipment, the IRS says 5 years, or you elect to use Section 179 and write it off in 1 year. Most people like the 1 year write-off because it's immediate satisfaction, save a lot of taxes. But, Greg has taken on the philosophy, and we've talked about it a lot, of, hey, let's not write it off in 1 year. Let's spread it out over time so we're able to shelter income down the road when he may be going from a 30% tax bracket up to a 35% tax bracket because we begin to make more money. Well, let's stay in that 30% bracket by having more deductions in the future. So that's what I mean by spreading out the deductions. The accountant or whoever does the taxes has the choice, hopefully, in conversation oftentimes with the doctor, as to kind of what philosophy. And most people, like I said, it's hard to get people to understand that it's sometimes better to spread those deductions out.
Well, I would, going back, because there's a lot of clinicians here, it's the treatment planning, hey, look, you want me to put a big filling in that tooth that has a big cavity, which it may only last a year or two and you get immediate satisfaction, or I can crown that tooth and, it'll last you for quite some time and we don't have to ever worry about that tooth again. So I kind of look at that the same way you do tax planning. It's like, do we just patch things and just kind of get us by for the year or two, or go long-term?
Yeah. How many ops are in your second location? 8?
Right now, 2.
No, two are fitted out, but how many is it built out for?
It's built out for 8.
Yeah.
So mainly 8 because I already know the formula. And so I didn't want to fiddle with that. Like, I know how to make an 8-chair practice work. So I thought, you know what, if I can build from another 8-chair practice, I kind of know how to already do it. So.
And that just goes into your planning, right? Hey, if I can take something from 0 to 8 and I have a, $3 million practice over here and I can build another 3 million and I've got now a 6, maybe $7 million practice, that's pretty good. Like I'm at a good size, but oftentimes again, people will say, I can do it in 8. Well, why not build 10? Why not build 12? And again, you went of the planning of, I know how to do 8. Let's do 8 again.
Yeah, exactly. So, what did I do during the COVID-19 shutdown? I mean, other than watch Netflix, Tiger King, and, all the different, The Last Dance. We as a team used this opportunity to strategize how we would reopen. What technologies were we going to integrate? We did Zoom calls for team building. We did it weekly, even if it was just touching base, just so we saw each other's face. We started writing out exposure plans. Like I said, Dr. George Kwan, my associate, created YouTube videos to, personalize our office. We used it to educate our patients about how we do sterilization, how to wear a mask, all sorts of educational things. And then when we were going to open back up, we actually, and you can see it on our website, it's called our welcome back video. We created a welcome back video for our patients so that they could see that we put all the safety measures in place so that they felt comfortable coming in. In Massachusetts, we opened slowly in phases to be safe and to make our patients feel safe. We split up into a team of 1 doctor, 1 hygienist, 1 assistant, and 1 front desk. Super inefficient. I think I lost money opening that way, but it made everybody feel safe, not just the patients, but my team, because some of them were very scared too. The plan was, obviously, since we broke out in teams, if a team did get COVID positive, that team would go into quarantine and the other teams would pick up their schedule. As we entered to phase 2, we started adding more team members and, meshing. And then phase 3 was to kind of bring us back to full efficiency. We do have a rollback plan in place in case, COVID cases rise or if there's an exposure. So that way we don't completely shut down, because that was my fear with having a big office like this. I don't want to completely shut down. I want to at least be able to run. And then, Mark's had several webinars about PPP loan and EIDL loans that I obviously applied for that, and that helped cushion for some of the worst case scenario. But that was instrumental, what you said to me when this first happened. Hoard cash, try to lower your expenses because you're not going to have any revenue.
No, and this is great. This is an awesome plan. And I love the fact how you did Zoom meetings. I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, there was a lot of practices that unfortunately, doctors just buried their head in the sand and said, this will go away. And I had practices, continuing working, just different times throughout the entire thing. But having the plan in place was great. And then we discussed the financial plan along the way in terms of, applying for the PPP and how we use it and tracking it. And, we're still waiting on answers for all that. And so I'll be doing more webinars in the future as the government kind of makes those changes. But, having the rollback plan, having the, if you need to quarantine and not worrying about, hey, this isn't efficient and I might not make money, but it's for the safety of everybody and it's how we're going to get going. So I think that was just shows the love for your staff, you know, which is huge, and it just takes you that much further. And I think your staff really supported you during that time too, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
absolutely. I didn't have a single person not come back. You know, I'm proud to say that. And they were all very supportive with the shutdown. And when I did have to furlough them, I mean, they knew how much that killed me. Like, I just really didn't want to do it. So, but it was, they all knew.
It was the right thing to do, and you had to do it, and they understood, you know, that you're doing it for the benefit, for their benefit, and for the benefit of the practice, and everything. One, in terms of hiring people, you know, just to hit some of the questions here, what qualities do you look for when taking on an associate? You know, I mean, what do you look for when you're looking to do when you do that?
Well, again, you saw my 5 values: honesty, leadership, creativity, efficiency, and fun. Those are, my values are very simple. I use the values, the vision and the mission statement. When I'm hiring an associate, I say, look, this is what I'm about. Do you agree with this? And if we can see eye to eye, then I can see us working together. If you don't, then, you know, it's also a great way to part ways with someone. Hey, I'm sorry. You know, I don't think our vision and values align, so I think we should part ways.
All right. You know, how far is each practice from each other?
Bedford from Westford is about a 25-minute drive. It's about 11 miles.
Yeah, so you're not pulling from the same, crowd, but you know, far enough away where you can go to either one, and you do see people at either one, right? Can a patient go
Right.
from one to the other?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the challenges that we're trying to do right now. We do see patients in both offices. That's more of a technology challenge because of the database thing of having patient charts, you know, integrated. But that's a challenge that we're trying to deal with right now. But yes, I do. The goal wasn't for the second practice to cannibalize, but it was also just to, you know, it's like two circles that kind of overlap each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many of the new operatories, you got 8 operatories, and even in both practices, 8 operatories in both, how many are considered hygiene ops?
I usually run about 4 hygiene chairs. Not every day has 4 hygiene. Some days have 3. But yeah, that's usually 4 chairs are going to be hygiene, and then the other 4 are going to be doctor operatories.
And some want to know are you hiring?
Possibly as I grow, as long as you fit my vision and values. So.
Yeah. If you're checking all the boxes, maybe opportunities for sure.
Again, I'm very transparent. All of my values are very transparent. So if you fit those, then sure.
Perfect.
And so again, with COVID-19, we wanted to implement technology. You know, I spent about, you know, $15,000 making sure that my team felt safe. So, you know, we implemented, you know, air purifiers, technology called BOLA, which is voice activated perio charting, which you don't have to touch the keyboard. Obviously, you know, PureVac, you know, relief systems. I kind of bought everything under the sun because I wanted them to feel safe. I mean, some stuff I bought, I was like, yeah, you know what, it makes them feel safe. That's fine. So.
I mean, and do I love all the purchases? No, I don't love all the purchases, right? I don't want Greg to continue to take on debt. I understand the vision and I understand where we're going. But what Greg also understands is his employees and his patients get paid first, right? So if he's got to take a little bit of a hit in his salary because this is the way he wants to run it, he gets it. And he's willing to absorb that decrease. And I think, again, a lot of practices aren't. If I make $200,000 this year, I want $200,000 next year, whatever happened. Greg, on the other hand, just has a philosophy of, I made 200 one year. I'm okay with 170. I'm okay with 150 because I'm going to buy X, Y, and Z, or I'm going to bring someone on for 50 grand. But I know, because I will take my 200 and make it 300 in a year or two. It's, you know, one step, you know, back to take 2 steps forward kind of thing.
Right. And you know, I preach about the team, you know, your team is going to follow the leader. It always starts from the top. So I always show them that I'm always willing to do something for the team, like take a pay cut. You know, hey, look, I'm not going to take a salary. This is what's best for the office. So, you know, leadership always starts from the top.
Yep. Someone asked a question, do you use Dentrix or Dentrix Ascend?
No, I use EagleSoft. Don't tell Henry Schein.
Okay.
But
Sorry,
I inherited EagleSoft when I bought the practice. So
you would use Dentrix, so when we make the next change, we'll talk about that.
There you go. And then another thing, you know, my motto for the patients, I had a motto for my team, which was be like water, because we got to adapt to what COVID-19 is doing. You know, I told the patients our greatest wealth is our health. That was my motto. That was what, it was in our welcome back video. And this was my theme for the entire team and patients, and it goes back to what Mark said, nowhere have you seen in my vision, mission, value statements is about profit. It's not about making the most amount of money. It's about, hey, look, we're here to take care of people. Managing the demand was actually more than expected. When we first opened, I actually originally thought that 50% of people weren't going to come in because they were just scared. But, it was amazing how many people had broken teeth, emergencies, and they were like, thank God you're open. In order to social distance, because I have a pediatric dentist and it's very hard with little kids in the office to kind of isolate them, my Bedford location, which is the new location, kind of turned into a pedo office for 3 days a week because it was the only way we could kind of keep them apart. So kind of going back to what you were saying, Mark, the intention wasn't for my Westford patients to go to Bedford, but we had to kind of make them go there for the safety of all. And also with the inefficiencies of COVID-19, we started to make the decisions of dropping insurances with poor reimbursements. One of the technologies I integrated 3 years ago, I didn't think was going to be a big marketing thing, was CERIC. Because it's a one-visit dentistry, a lot of the patients like that because, it minimizes the exposure of them coming to the office. And my team liked it too because we could finish it in one day.
Yeah, I mean, same day dentistry is obviously huge, and nowadays with all the stuff going on, it's great. I mean, some of my CAD/CAM offices have just taken off during that period of time. Greg leases both locations. That's been a couple questions. Lease both locations, but how many days a month do you have the specialty in there? I mean, you probably have them a lot, but.
So pedo's 3 days a week, endo's 1 day a week, but I have 2 endodontists, 1 in each location. And then the periodontist is about 3 days a month. And then I have 2 associates, 1 full-time, 1 part-time, and then myself.
Yeah, and then for you don't have given your size now, there's no HR director on staff or anything like that right now, correct?
Well, my office manager kind of doubles that, but we actually outsource that to Bent Erickson. So Henry Schein kind of connected me with them to kind of outsource our HR.
And I would highly recommend that. I mean, there's a couple companies out there that we work with, Ben Erickson being one of them for sure, and that do a great job. And with all the different employee stuff going on, you definitely want to reach out to HR people if there are issues. And I think that's super important as you grow and you hit certain levels of employees. So you want to make sure you're on target for that.
Awesome. And I know a lot of you guys think I kind of went full blast here from 2010 to now. But I want to leave you guys with this quote. Someone graduated at 21 but waited 6 years to get a good job. Someone had no education but was a millionaire at 21. Someone got married at 20 but got divorced 5 years later. Someone got married at 30 but found everlasting love. You're not late, you're not early, you're on time. So look, what I did for my practice with my mission, vision, and value statements worked for me, and I went at my own pace. So for those of you who want to be an associate for 10 years before you start, but that's okay. Everybody has what works for them. So with that, Mark and I would like to thank you. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see a candid look at my practice. It's at The Way of the Wu, and Mark has his contact information, and I'm happy to stay on for more questions that people may have.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say I'm as live on Twitter as you are, but we try to post things there. But you're happy to, welcome to follow me on Twitter, sign up for our newsletter, especially as the PPP stuff continues. You can go to my website there, www.rosendentalcpa.com, and lots of changes continue to come out as we head into the end of the year here. Some other questions here how did you decide which insurances to drop? Did you use a service or did you kind of do it on your own?
That we did I sat with my office manager. We obviously looked at a fee analysis. That's actually where the Henry Schein practice analysis can be helpful because you can see where your fees are and what you're getting reimbursed. For me, my goal was always to kind of eventually become fee for service. So right now we're only in network with two insurance carriers now.
Yeah. Someone asked, I mentioned different percentage of specialists. Does that include implants for periodontist? Oftentimes, no. In a perio, getting paid 40% or so. You don't really take the implant costs out. A lot of practices don't. In a general general dentist, you'll take out 35 or 50% of lab. Yeah. However, If you got CAD CAM in there, there may not be a lab cost. You may, have an adjustment, but that works a little bit
Yeah.
differently.
I don't charge my associates a lab fee because we have CEREC.
Yep,
so
that's
just put that
typical.
on the table. As far as like different specialties, I will say to you guys that I personally think the easiest specialty to onboard is endo. It's the least amount of cost, but if you're gonna, because of the equipment, there's not as much cost for endo. But it is actually one of the most difficult ones just because there's a lot of post-op. If you're going to integrate a periodontist or oral surgeon, just keep in mind, if you're going to do implants, you got to carry about $50,000 of inventory because you need all the different sizes of implants. So it becomes a rolling inventory, right, Mark? Because you wind up
Looking for a pen.
No.
It does. It does. I think the hardest one to, endo is easiest. I agree with you 100%.
Right.
I would say the hardest one to implant is ortho, because if you bring an ortho in and you don't, you're not able to accomplish that ortho leaves, you're stuck with the cases, and it's not a type of dentistry that a lot of generals or other types of dentists can do. So bring an orthodontist on into a general practice or into a multi-specialty is a tough piece. But I'd say, pedo bring in is pretty easy into a general practice to take families. Endo is definitely an easy piece too.
Pedo's easy, except one thing that I would advise people if you're going to do it is that plan for growth, because it will kill your waiting room and it'll kill your steri and it'll kill your front desk. Meaning that, your pedo schedule is like, every 20 minutes or every half hour per kid. And so you can imagine the volume. It's a volume game. And so I learned that the hard way. That's actually why I outgrew my 5-chair practice. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually like outgrowing the space too quickly. So, which is a good problem to have, but I literally had patients almost sitting on top of each other in the waiting room. So, which we can't do now with COVID, which is why we had to separate.
Right. And you need to, again, plan for all of that stuff and know that that's coming. And nowadays that's very hard. Your leases, how long did you sign each lease for? Did you do them, in longer terms, 10-year terms? I mean, sometimes it's all about negotiating the deal, and sometimes they want to lock you in longer. So, I don't know what you did yours, or did you have help negotiating?
So the first one I did myself, which I think I did a pretty good job, but that one was a 30-year lease because I just was like, I just want to lock in. But I learned the hard way that that's not always the best thing. So I worked with I worked with a lawyer the second time around for the Bedford location, and they had advised me to do kind of a 5-year with a 5-year option. So and I learned a lot of things else to put in the lease that I didn't put on my first lease. So I definitely, just like with anything, you want to seek professional help. Don't do it on your own.
Perfect. That's, I think that's, we're 7 minutes past our time. I think we're probably in good shape here. So Greg, I appreciate you letting me join you on your journey along the way. And I know we've got lots of years ahead of us. So it's been fun so far, and I'm sure it'll be fun as we continue to go.
Absolutely. This is always fun. I enjoy it. And Mark, hopefully we get to do another one of these.
That sounds good to me. We'll see how the ratings come out when they come out, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Well, you were certainly entertaining to listen to, and we appreciate all of the insight that you shared. Thank you, everyone, for attending. If anyone has any additional questions, feel free to email Mark, reach out to Dr. Wu, or you can email us at webinars@henryschein.com, and we will route your question appropriately. Everyone who attended tonight will receive a link of the recording in the coming week via email. So on behalf of Henry Schein, thanks again to our speakers, and everyone have a great night.